Welcome to my podcast. I'm recording this from inside the castle, the smoking room, a beautiful tangerine-coloured, large, high-ceilinged room with magnificent paintings. But I'm sitting next to a magnificent man, Colin Bell, a Mosquito pilot from World War II, heading towards 100 years old next year. We're all going to be celebrating, and it's a great honour to be sitting here with him today. Welcome, Colin. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I know you're 99. Can I say that?
You can indeed.
But you're looking good. You've got no wrinkles. I want to know your secret.
Well, I'm frequently asked that question. I say it's really a matter of luck and genes. And the genes are a matter of luck. But to keep people amused, I usually say it's a matter of exercise, alcohol, and the love of good women. But it's a great pleasure and indeed an honour to be with you. I'm absolutely delighted.
So I know that you were born in 1927.
21.
You were born in 1921, which was just after the First World War. And during the First World War, many men from the Royal Flying Corps had come to Highclere. It was a hospital, and they were treated by the earlier Lady Carnarvon. They were very well fed. Yes. They were given excellent beer and red wine and whiskey. And they were such extraordinary, courageous men because they went back again to climb in their very early flying machines.
Yes.
In support of their comrades.
Yes.
In World War I. I mean, extraordinary courage. And then leading from that, it led obviously to the Royal Air Force, which you, I know, took part in World War II, Colin.
The flying aces of World War I were remarkably courageous, and their average lifetime as pilots was 6 weeks. Which is pretty bad. Mark you, in Bomber Command, if you were flying Sterlings, you had a 5% chance of coming back from each raid. Over a period of 30 raids, your chances of survival were less than 25%. And that took a lot of courage too. I'm just grateful that I was never called upon to fly Sterlings. I was very, very fortunate. I flew Mosquitoes, what was known as the Wooden Wonder. They were remarkable planes, and if it's a privilege to be here, it was also a privilege to fly Mosquitoes.
Well, it was, and I love the connection with Mosquitoes, Colin, because obviously Geoffrey de Havilland made his first flight from Highclere in 1910. So there's a lovely connection with Geoffrey de Havilland and the extraordinary planes he created and
Yes.
built, from the moths to the Mosquitoes, which has formed part of my research because his father was vicar at Cruxeaston, just 4 miles from where we're sitting.
Yes.
In a beautiful part of the world. You really feel you're on top of the world with these skies all around you. But he took off from just 1.5 miles
Yes.
to the southeast of us in 1910, and the Mosquito was an amazing plane.
Yes.
And I think it used to really annoy the Germans because the bullets used to go straight through the wood, didn't they?
Yes. I'd like to pay tribute to Geoffrey de Havilland because he was not only a man of vision, he was just brilliant. And when he designed the first Mosquito, he tried to sell it to the Air Ministry, and the civil servants up there poured scorn on it. They didn't want to have any part of it. And but he persevered using his own money, and in the teeth of opposition, he produced this fantastic aircraft. And of course, once they saw it flying, and the way it behaved, then they all changed their minds and they backed it. But if it hadn't been for Geoffrey de Havilland's vision
and courage
and putting his own money behind it, we should have never had the Mosquito. A word about the Mosquito: it could carry the same weight of bombs to Berlin as an American flying fortress, and it could make the journey there and back in half the time that a flying fortress took. So, in theory, you could go there and back twice on a Mosquito to equal double the tonnage that the flying fortress carried. It really was a remarkable aircraft, yeah.
And it was very fast, wasn't it? That was one of its advantages.
Yes, exceedingly fast. There were no propeller-driven night fighters that could catch the Mosquito, and that's why probably I'm here today. The only aircraft that could catch the Mosquito was a jet aircraft, and I had a tangle with one of those on one occasion, but I got rid of him.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
How amazing. And so how many of you were flying the Mosquito?
I beg your pardon?
How many of you were flying the Mosquito?
Just two of us.
Just two of you.
I had a Canadian navigator who was a brilliant man, best navigator on the Squadron. I was very lucky to have him. He was with me throughout the whole of my tour of operations, which was 50 flights, 50 trips, yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
How amazing. And was that always towards Berlin and Germany? Where did the operations take you? Was it always in Europe or was it also abroad?
I think we did one daylight raid outside Germany, but all the other raids were at night over Germany. They weren't very friendly, and it was an interesting experience. I had the satisfaction of knowing that we were carrying the war to the enemy and destroying their capacity to attack us. And that's what I try and put over when I'm talking about Bomber Command. The whole objective was to destroy their war-making capacity so that they could attack us. And by us, I mean our men, our women, our children. So
our families,
it was something that was necessary.
Yeah.
Sad, but there we are. As somebody once said, we didn't start it, did we? We were just defending ourselves.
No, and I think there was little chance to come to a treaty. There were few moments where it might have been possible to make a treaty within World War II. It was an all or nothing war. There was no chance to discuss, to negotiate. It was like a huge train which was going to lead to one side or the other, annihilating the other. There was no discussion possible.
Well, once the war has commenced,
yes,
that was perfectly true.
And before it commenced, we did what we could.
Lord Halifax wanted to strike a deal with Hitler, and Churchill would have no part of it. Of course, Churchill was right. He always was. One of my heroes.
I think he's many people's heroes.
Yeah.
And in that case, I think his judgment was more right than Lord Halifax's,
yeah.
who was a remarkable man. But I think it was Adolf Hitler had an amorality which was better understood by Churchill than Halifax, if you like. But the Mosquito, do you know how many Mosquitoes were made during World War II?
Oh, was it about 8,000.
8,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
And somebody once asked me, well, how many people flew Mosquitoes? Well, if there were 2 for every plane that was built, and there's probably more than that, we're talking about in excess of 16,000 crew, navigator and pilot. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm sure there were more than that as well.
I think so,
because overall their record of coming back was quite good because of their extraordinary construction, as far as I understood, compared to some of the other bombers.
They talk about it as being the wooden wonder, but by the time the wood had all been put together with laminates and pressure and everything else, I always felt that it was as good as metal.
Was it very cold when you were flying at night?
No, the heating in the aircraft was exceedingly good.
Oh, was
I
it?
used to just fly in what is known as a battle dress, which is in fact a bit like this. No problem at all, excepting on one occasion the heating failed and the temperature outside was about -40. And I really don't know how I flew the thing back. When I got back, one of my fitters had to lift me out of the plane almost in a sitting position. That wasn't much fun.
No, yeah. My goodness. So were there any particular memorable sorties, memorable flights that you had? Were there some of your flights that really stuck out?
I suppose the most memorable one, apart from being chased around the sky by a jet aircraft, at least I've always assumed it was a jet aircraft. I never saw him. It was all done by electronics, but I won't go into that. You say memorable. Yes. Once we were unfortunate enough to have a shell burst under us, and it lifted the whole plane up. And because we had old-fashioned carburetors, it stopped both engines. Wow. And my navigator said, what do we do now? And I said, well, we must wait. What else can we do? After what seemed like 6 months, the engines restarted and we got back home. In the morning, I went out to the back to look at the aircraft, and the whole of the back of it was shredded like a colander. So it's a good thing that it didn't get to the front. And my fitter came up to me and he said, I thought you'd like to have these as a memento, sir. I said, what are they? And he said, well, they're 2 shell fragments. And I said, oh, where did you get them from? He said, they were in the parachute that you were sitting on.
Wow.
So I said, oh, good thing they didn't penetrate any further. Stupidly, I threw them away.
Oh, no.
I wish I still had them.
You flew throughout the war, and then at the end of the war, did you stay with the RAF, Colin? Or?
Well, I had the opportunity of staying. My wife would have no part of it. She said, I've been with you all through the war. I don't really want you to continue as a regular RAF officer. So I said, well, good enough. You're more important to me than a career in the RAF. I said, I'll go in for silver flying, because I said, the only thing I'm qualified to do is to be a pilot. No, she said, that will be the end of our marriage. She was probably right. So I said, well, what can I do? And she said, well, you can always go back to what you were training to do when war broke out. And I said, but I'm not qualified. I was training to be a chartered surveyor.
Right.
And I said, I'm not qualified. And I said, we're going to be desperately hungry all the time I am qualifying. She said, no problem. We'll overcome it. Because she's a woman of wonderful character, apart from being wonderfully attractive. And so that's what I did. I went back, and actually I worked for the government. I qualified, I became a chartered surveyor. I stayed working for the government until I retired at the age of about 60 or 62. Then I set up my own practice, and I went on working till 9 months ago.
Fantastic.
And at that point, I felt I'd given the Chancellor of the Exchequer enough by way of tax, so I stopped. It's been a great life. I've been extraordinarily lucky, haven't I? Mm.
Well, you have, but it seems to me, so the first question I must ask you is, where did you meet this wonderfully attractive woman with a great character? Where did you meet your wife?
Oh, it's quite a story. She came to work as a secretary. Remember, she was younger than me. I was about 19 at the time, and she was 17. She came to work as a secretary to the manager in the office. She hated me. She used to go back and complain bitterly to her family about how she had to put up with that terrible boy. And I was always trying to get her to come out with me. And as you realise, I wasn't making much progress. But every girl at that day wanted to go and see Vivian Leigh and Clark Gable with Gone with the Wind.
Absolutely.
And so I phoned up the Empire Leicester Square and I said to the box office girl, is there any chance of getting a couple of tickets for Gone with the Wind? And she said, oh, you must be joking, we're booked up for the next 6 months. And I said, my whole future depends on this. Oh, well, she said, look, if you come up before 6 o'clock on Friday night, I might have a couple of tickets for you. So armed with that, I went back to my lovely Kath and said, I've got my father's car on Friday night and I got 2 tickets to Gone with the Wind. Would you like to come with me? And I could see her sort of fighting. She said, oh, well, all right. So off we went. And we had a lovely evening. And we thoroughly enjoyed the film. I took her for supper afterwards. And I got her home to her father at 2:30 in the morning. After that, we never looked back.
How lovely.
No.
So she was finally convinced you weren't that irritating boy. So this must have been in 1940 or something like that, was it?
Well, it was. It was 1940. Just then, of course, I volunteered for the RAF. And
then you were based
she went up north with her father because they were relocated out of London. And I lost touch. But while I was in America, because I was training in America, and then I eventually became an instructor out in America. But while I was out there, I wrote to her. I came back and I met up with her. And, well, we were married in the space of 3 months, yeah.
How wonderful. Yeah. Where were you living at that point, Colin?
What, in this country?
Yeah, yes, in this country. When
I was living at a place called East Molesey.
Right.
It's the other side of Hampton Court Bridge.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And delightful spot. I was living with my parents, of course, because I was quite a young man. And then I volunteered for the RAF and I went up to Oxford and I suppose at that time they had 100 applicants for every place because every young man wanted to be a pilot in the Royal Air Force. I was interviewed by not a very sympathetic board. In fact, I could feel the chill in the air. And I remember the engineering officer saying to me, he thought he'd get rid of me, he said, you say that you can maintain your motorcycle engine. And I said, yes, I stripped it down and put it back together again. And he said, well, in that case, he said, you'll have no trouble telling me how fast the camshaft runs in relation to the crankshaft. And then he looked around, you see. Well, it was the one question I could answer. And I said, half time. And the whole atmosphere in the room changed.
Oh, thank goodness for that, Colin.
So I was in.
You were in. How wonderful.
That was on such small things, a whole career depends.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah.
It really is. And also the coincidence, if you like, of your wife to be working in an office where you were, and again that choice and the luck that you managed to get the tickets and persuade her. And,
that's right.
And again, the happiness that being in love and being with a partner you adore for so many years of your life just
Well, we were married.
That.
Yes, we were married for 73 years.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Colin, it's amazing. What an
Yeah.
achievement. And then you've had children and grandchildren as well, and great-grandchildren, I'd imagine.
I had a girl and a boy in that order, while the girl was up in Downham Market. She was 6 weeks old while I was on operations.
Wow.
And then later on, I had a son, and then we had a whole series of grandchildren, and I've now got 5 great-grandchildren.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Absolutely
So
stunning, Colin.
It's been, until I lost my wife, and I mean, that's a body blow from which you never really recover. It was a very happy existence, but since then I've just I've done the only thing possible, and that's to go forward.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not too bad. I make the best of it. Mm.
Well, I'm so happy that you've come here to chat to all of us. And if there's, what do you try to pass on to your children? What did you try to pass on to your children, Colin? What did you want them to take from your life? Was it the trying? Was it the courage? Was it what did you want to pass on to them?
That is a very difficult question. Children, by and large,
ignore you.
Don't take too kindly to guidance and advice from their parents.
No, they don't.
And I did bring my son up to be a charter surveyor, and for the last 30 years he's been my partner.
How lovely.
And so that was okay. I don't know really what they've got out of it. I like to think that they probably got much more from their mother than they did from me. I'm sure that is true, because she was a very talented girl. She was expert on art history, and yes, I think that she was their role model rather than me. But maybe I'm wrong.
It is very hard. I was thinking that, again, in World War II, there were very challenging times for you and your family, for the compromises you made, for the fact your wife had to say goodbye to you in the morning and hope that you came back in the evening.
Yes.
And it was that courage and belief and confidence that, again, we're trying to find today in a way that we haven't had to for some time.
No.
So it's just, again, but it's very hard. You know, I'm thinking what I can pass on to my son, and he doesn't want to hear anything from me. But I hope sometimes it's the stories. It's the stories and the fact that he sees that we're trying, that we're trying to do our best. So I suppose I was wondering what you thought, or, you know, whether your daughter or your son might have seen in their parents, because I think some of these lessons from history have never been more important, Colin.
Yeah. Well, I suppose my children got moral guidance from both myself and my wife, particularly my wife. And they've been very good children. They haven't got involved in crime or drugs or anything of that sort. They've lived very good lives, and I'm immensely proud of them. Mm. Yeah.
As I'm sure they are of you.
Wow.
So can I ask, with your mosquitoes, how many planes did you get through? Did you have to keep swapping plane as they were shot down then and try again, Colin?
I suppose I used to swap around on 2 or 3 planes, but I didn't always fly the same plane, but I tried to as much as I could, but it didn't matter. They were all excellent planes, and I'd got a wonderful flight sergeant in charge of maintenance. I mean, he was worth his weight in gold, and he'd work out at night with fitters and riggers, and in appalling conditions, and made sure that the aircraft was in good shape. And I used to respond by taking down to him a quantity of rum that used to be dished out to me by a very, very attractive waif when I used to come back from operations. You know, they'd give you a mug of tea that was about a pint of it, and then this lovely girl used to arrive with a big ginger beer barrel full of rum, and she used to say, "Would you like to have a little rum in your tea, sir?" And I used to say, "No, but you can tip it into this bottle." So, because I thought they needed rum down on the dispersal much more than I did, yes.
Extraordinary times. Did those who flew Mosquitoes, did you have a better chance of coming back than in a Spitfire or a Flying Fortress? What was the most dangerous plane to fly, Colin? Do you know?
Oh, without question, the Flying Fortress. The tour for Flying Fortress crews, these are all American crews, was 25 missions. They were lucky if they did 5 before getting shot down, because there was a theory advanced by their generals that if they all stayed in close formation, they'd be able to defend themselves, but it didn't work. And eventually they had to give up daylight bombing because the loss rate was so horrendous. I mean, they went to some targets and they lost 45% of their number just on one raid. I mean, it was simply appalling. But it all changed when they produced an aircraft known as the Mustang. And the Mustang had an Addison engine, which wasn't all that good, but they decided they'd have Rolls-Royce Merlins in. And once the Rolls-Royce Merlin was in, it became a super plane. They could escort Flying Fortresses all the way to Berlin and back. And they literally drove the Luftwaffe out of the sky in daylight. Yeah. So, yes, if you ask me that question, which was the most dangerous plane to fly, I'd say without question it was the Flying Fortress.
How interesting. And obviously one crashed in the hills above here, just on a practice run. And
the aircraft that I flew was a Canadian-built Mosquito, and it had Packard Merlin engines in. And somebody once said to me, well, were they as good as the Rolls-Royce built Merlins? And I said, well, yes, but they had one weakness. Some of them suffered from a weak conrod. And if you were taking off at night and with full bomb load, and with your flaps down and your undercarriage down, with your engine on full power, if the conrod broke, then the engine failed, and then you had no choice. You couldn't continue climbing. You just had to do the best you could and land the plane. And at night, that was a very, very hazardous business. So we did lose 1 or 2 people in that way. And so the engineer came down on one occasion from Packard Merlin, and he said, well, we're putting this right. And somebody said, well, how long will it take to put it right? So I said, well, about 3 months, we'll change all the engines and make, as soon as they come in for service, we'll change them. And one of our numbers said to the flight commander, well, what do we do meanwhile? he said, you go on just the same as before, maximum effort. So we had to continue, knowing there was a chance, not a very big chance, but there was just that chance that your engine would fail on takeoff. And somebody said, well, what do we do? And some wag said, well, you just go in ahead and die like an officer and a gentleman.
Oh, golly. No, I think you maximum effort and you come back to live to fight another day, which is what I think everybody would have wanted you all to do. But how extraordinary. Colin, there are so many stories you could share. And perhaps there may be some questions which come out of this, which then I can come back to you on at a later date, which would be so interesting. And I imagine above all there was tremendous camaraderie for you within the squadron, within all the crew who are keeping your aircraft going. Well, and that must have been the heart of what helped you go up each day. Yeah.
Well, I am in touch with the son of my Canadian navigator.
Are you?
Yes.
How amazing.
And he came over to see me recently. I offered to give hospitality to his wife as well. And she said, you'll like this. And she said, no, this is a man's thing. I don't think I'll be particularly interested in coming. So I looked her up on Facebook, and I saw that she was a devoted follower of Downton Abbey. So I said to her, well, I'm due to go down to see Lady Carnarvon at Highclere Castle in about 6 months' time. Are you sure that you don't want to come? And of course she was very, very keen to come, but sadly,
she can't
reasons
fly
I won't go into, it cannot be. But of course, the story of Downton Abbey has gone worldwide. Yes. It's very, very popular in America and in Canada and in Australia.
Well, Colin, I hope you'll I think he was called Doug, your navigator.
Sorry?
I hope you'll let your navigator's daughter-in-law know that when she is over, she must come and see us.
Of course.
Another time.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's been a joy to be interviewed by you.
Oh, Colin, thank you.
I hope we shall meet up again.
That'd be absolutely lovely, Colin. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. I don't want you to miss out on the next one, so please do try and press the subscribe button.